Thank you so much. Fantastic discussion. Thanks, Robin, Sanford, Mark, and of course, special thanks to our moderator and curator of this, Jim Montevale. A great talk around driving the future of connectivity. Moving up next, we have two fantastic human beings who shall be putting the discussion on AI to a new level in order to fuel innovation. And I have true pleasure to have as our guest Sandy Carter, who shall be answering the questions of Spriha Srivastava, Executive Editor at Business Insider. Spriha, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this brilliant fireside chat with Sandy Carter. I'm very, very excited to welcome you all. Sandy Carter is Vice President, Public Sector Partners and Programs at AWS. In this role, she's responsible for driving next generation partnering. She's also a champion of gender diversity and has won a number of awards for her work on this front. So without further ado, I want to welcome Sandy and really get her to tell us what she does, what her role at AWS is, and everything that she's been doing for diversity. So welcome to Webit, Sandy. It's such a pleasure to speak to you today.
And thank you as well. Such an honor to be on Webit. I've watched Webit grow from very small to being the huge influencer it is today. So I'm so honored to be here doing this fireside chat with you.
That's great.
So my role is pretty broad. I work for Amazon Web Services, and I'm the Vice President in charge of Public Sector Partners and Programs, which you're probably wondering what that is. Just like my parents always ask me, what is it that you do? I have like the coolest job at Amazon. I get to support our partners in not only government, but nonprofits, education, so how we're transforming how our kids learn, federal healthcare, which, as you know, has had massive disruption due to COVID, space as in outer space, not space as in location, which has also been quite fascinating. So I get to work with partners across all of those areas to serve our customers. I also serve on multiple boards, including Girls in Tech. I'm chairperson of the board for Girls in Tech as well. So as you mentioned, I have a huge focus on diversity and ensuring that all of us are reaching back and pulling others forward with us.
That's great. And it's very impressive, Sandy. I can't wait to sort of really delve deeper into some of these conversations with you today. But I want to start by asking you, because your role at Amazon Web Services also involves a lot of data. And I want to talk about the importance of data really in today's world and how we use data to fuel innovation. And your thoughts on that, really.
So, we view data as being essential, and COVID really taught us how important data is. If you think about, getting masks to the right location, getting food sources to the right location, even getting doctors to the right hospitals to treat the right set of symptoms and issues that people were having, you had to depend on data. And so people, companies, governments realized that they did not have enough data. In fact, a recent study that was done by a set of CIOs from IDG showed that 61% said the pandemic accelerated the importance of data and the pace of data, and that over 60% of companies, governments, agencies now are more enthusiastic and more focused on working with data because of what the pandemic did.
So data is such an important part of what you do. How do you protect yourself against the massive, sort of risk of cyber attacks, cybercrime? And that is something that is a big risk for a lot of companies these days. So how do you protect yourself?
Yeah, there are several elements of having a data strategy, and we believe very firmly that a data strategy needs to interlock with your business strategy. It's so critical that those two go together. So as you're looking at your entire data strategy, of course, one of those would be security. How do you keep that data secure? But there are other elements of that data strategy too. Like what are your business goals? What are you trying to solve with having more data or consolidated view of data or using data in a machine learning area? What are the sources of data that you have? And are those the right sources of data to make the right decisions? And it's not just the source. Do you have the right quality of data and the right quantity of data? So you could have two people giving you data, and that would not be a statistical significant amount of data. So you always need to look at source, quantity, and quality. And as you're looking at that, where you put your data, typically we see people now, companies now putting data in a data lake. We view a technical assessment of that data is really important. And part of that technical assessment includes ensuring that you've got the right level of security in place, the right level of protection, the right level of sovereignty, especially if you're in Europe today. It's just really important that you look at all those elements of a data strategy.
And how does artificial intelligence and machine learning come into play with your data strategy at AWS?
So, a lot of people will say that data is oil. I like to say that data is soil. It's the soil from which everything else grows. So if you think about analytics, you really can't do analytics and extract great insight unless you have really good data. Now, data is growing exponentially, but if you don't have the right data, then you're not going to be able to make that right business decision as you move forward. And the same thing is true of AI and ML. If you think about artificial intelligence and machine learning, using that data, you can make better decisions, but you've got to have the right data to build those learning models. If you've got the right data, then you can look at adding new capabilities to your existing products, inventing net new products, optimizing your business with new efficiency, and even doing marketing like for Webit, right? Looking at the data of who attended and who got the most value to find other attendees for next year, for example. So AI and ML built on the right set of data impacts product development, marketing, sales. It impacts every part of your business that exists today.
Thank you, Sandy. And I wanted to talk a little bit about your role and the relationship AWS has with its partners. Could you talk to us a little bit about how that's grown ever since you've taken you've taken charge of this particular role, and especially with like a company like Microsoft, for instance, that's also one of your biggest cloud rival, isn't it?
So we at Amazon, one of our leadership principles is being customer obsessed. And we believe that if you work backwards from your customer, that you'll always provide value. And that data that you get from those customers really is what's going to lead you into the future and into your future growth. So by always focusing on what our partners need, what our customers need, that really drives us to create new products, different ways of reaching out to our customers, that sort of thing. And so for us, we look at ways that we can drive additional value. So for example, one of our partners is Splunk, and we were working with a company called FINRA, which is the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. And FINRA needed to be able to optimize some of their stock and their transactions that they were doing. And so by working backwards from the customer, which was FINRA, with our partner Splunk, we were able to not only move 170 applications to the cloud, but also to process 100 billion financial transactions a day. And what that enabled, all that data enabled to reduce cybersecurity risk, which you asked about earlier, allowed them to optimize their stock and their options, and also enabled them to do some of the basic things like, ensure badge access and access to the right sets of data as well. So we believe that by working backwards from our customers, we'll always get to the right solution, and we'll always solve the problem that our customers have, not just push a technology, but always hone in on what they need solved at that moment.
I want to talk a little bit about COVID as well and how that comes into play, because, when last year, when the pandemic hit and, took a number of industries by surprise, small players, more or less, everybody went back to the drawing board really to think about how they could evolve with the growing pandemic. What were the big challenges that you faced, and how did you sort of find your way through that?
Well, the pandemic impacted everybody in different ways, and impacted the workforce, hybrid work, and working from home was very different. It created a lot of different elements for our employees, and there was no playbook that was written for any of that. And so we, as many companies, had to experiment and try things to keep our employees motivated and driving forward while taking care of their families and the stress that COVID brought without being able to go on a vacation, for example. So we really did a lot of things to help our employees and shared those with our partners as well. Now, the pandemic, though, also had another impact. So for us, especially working in public sector, it accelerated the movement to the cloud and the movement to using data for AI and ML. And so we saw a lot more agencies and governments and countries moving to the cloud. And because of the savings that it brought, but also the agility it gave them, they then wanted to do even more in the cloud. We also saw the need for more data without exposing people, right? COVID created a risk for a lot of our essential people. So we saw a growth in a lot of our partners like Saildrone. Saildrone it's a remote data collection at scale. They have these unmanned surface vehicles that go around and they're in the ocean. They just did an Antarctic mission. They had 44 different drones. They collected 72 different data sets, 289 million samples, and all that real-time streaming of data helps us to make better decisions. In the past, that might have been done by groups of people getting together, but because of the risks that COVID posed, companies like Saildrone have really grown in their use of collecting that remote data. So those are just some of the impacts, remote work, remote learning, gathering data in unique ways and taking care of our own team, as well as helping our partners take care of their teams as well.
And you talked about governments, you touched upon governments moving data. I mean, we've recently seen here in the UK, UK's top intelligence services signing a data deal with AWS. What are the challenges that you see of working with the government? Big governments like the US government, the UK government. What are the big challenges of working with these governments?
I think it's more about opportunities because, we all want better citizen services. And because we have now so much more data, how much more powerful the government can be in delivering the right services. So we've seen governments really looking at how they develop their data strategy, how they use the data, but they protect the data, right? Because there's privacy and data protection that has to go on. And so these governments, I think, have a great opportunity to really shine in the way that they use that data for their citizens and for their government. So, for example, it's a smaller area, but it's here in the United States where there was a lot of flooding that was going on with climate change that's also upon us, right? And because of that, the government and the city had placed IoT sensors to sense some of the rising waters, but they found that they just didn't have enough IoT sensors. So instead of trying to go add more costs, they actually went out to the public and they said, hey, citizens, could you provide us insight and data? They provided a way that they could do that. And so that public-private partnership really solved the problems that they had. And I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of that public-private partnership in solving some of these issues that exist. So I think for governments around the world, it's such a big opportunity moving to the cloud, now having that data in a data lake and being able to use it with analytics and visualization and artificial intelligence, and then involving their own citizens to solve problems can have a magnificent impact on how we view the world and see the world today.
Thank you, Sandy. And I want to sort of talk a little bit about diversity and leadership because that's a topic that's very close to your heart, from what I understand. Mm-hmm. And you're a woman in tech, in business, and you are an inspiration for a number of young women out there who are entering this world, which can be a bit daunting. What would be your advice to all the young women around the world looking to join the world of tech, but sometimes feeling a bit daunted because it's sort of male dominated still in many ways?
So I would go with kind of 3 recommendations. The first one is, no matter what you're going to do, learn about technology, because technology drives everything now, right? I mean, if you think about it, Webit, look at everything you guys are doing today on broadcast. It's all driven by technology. Grocery stores, governments, everything tech plays a role. So I would say, just as math and English is required, I would love to see every woman out there, every young girl, every woman learn and understand about technology. The second one is I would love to see everybody, what I call, act like an open API. And an API in technology is the way that a company shares information about what it's learned, its area of expertise. And I think if all of the women who are currently in tech share their expertise, and all the next generation share their expertise, I think it will create just such a dynamic area for us. And just a quick story, I was traveling to India and I tweeted, "Hey, I'm headed to India." This was obviously pre-COVID. And when I arrived in India, after a 21-hour flight, I had mascara dripping down my face. The general manager of the hotel came up to me as I was checking in, and he said, "Hey, there's a big group of people for you down there." I put them in a conference room. And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. It's 11:30 p.m. I've flown 21 hours. It's too late for my team to be here. I wonder who that is." So I went down to the room, and I still remember this gentleman running up to me. His name was Anu, and he said, Sandy, welcome to Mumbai." And I still didn't know him. He wasn't part of my team. And I was like, who is this? Well, it turns out that he was the social media president for Mumbai. And he had seen my tweet about going to India. And so he said, "Wow, I would love to talk to Sandy. So I'm going to show up at her hotel. But better yet, I'm going to tell the entire social media club of Mumbai that she's coming." So this is a true story. 150 people showed up in a conference room in Mumbai at 11:30 p.m. at night. And they had a projector setting up. They had music too. They were doing their Bollywood dancing, but they had a projector set up, and they said, "What we really want you to do is we really want you to share some of your insight." And so I had a choice to make. A lot of young kids were there, a lot of diverse people. I mean, it was just an interesting time. And so I chose to go ahead and share my insight, acting like an open API. I could have chosen differently. And then I have to tell you, every customer meeting I went to that week, they would go, "Are you that crazy woman who stayed up till 2 a.m. in the morning with that group from Mumbai?" And I was like, "Yep, that's me." It opened the doors to so much. It's not why I did it, but it really enabled me, and it helped that whole team. So that would be my second piece of advice is, act like an open API. And the third is just do it, right? Get out there and take the plunge into tech. It is exciting, and then change as you go. There are lots of things we need to change in tech, and I would say just change as we go as well.
Great. And my last question to you is, you must be interviewing a lot of talent at AWS as part of your role. What would be your ideal candidate, and what questions would you ask them?
So we have a really unique hiring process at Amazon, and I really love it. It's actually one of the best things I've learned about Amazon. So we do phone screens first to figure out if the person has the functional capability. So if they're interviewing marketing, do they know how to do demand gen? If they're interviewing in technology, can they program? And so we do spend time understanding the functional fit. But then the rest of the interview is all about culture fit. Does the person have the right attitude? We're vocally self-critical. We don't think we know everything. We learn and be curious. We're going to always ask a lot of questions. We're customer obsessed. We don't want someone who's just technology obsessed. We do want builders, but we want builders who want to build for a customer, build for a partner, and really value that. And so for people who are interviewing with Amazon, it's really important that you have that functional fit, but the culture fit, the attitude is equally as important. And I will just tell you, for me, interviewing over the years, I've always found that if I have someone with the right attitude, who wants to learn and be curious, they're always the best fit, because you can teach functional skills, but what you can't teach is that culture and that attitude that exists to really make a difference in the world. And that's what we look for.
That's great. Thank you very much for your time today, Sandy. It's been such a pleasure talking to you, and to really hear about your insights, your experience. 20 minutes is not enough to know, what really goes on in day-to-day in your work, in your mind, about diversity and a lot of other things. So thank you so much for your time. I hope to see you in person at some point, and we can really take this conversation forward. But for now, thank you from everyone from the Webit team as well. Thank you to the audience as well for listening to us. And that's it from us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the audience. And if you do have any questions, I know this is not live, but you can reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter, and I'll be happy to answer any questions from you. And again, thank you to Webit for the honor of being here today. You were a great interviewer too, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.